morning. Good morning. We are going to continue our third series of presentations about religions that the ancient Hebrew people encountered in their journeys through life. This is the third presentation, and it's about the Canaanites, who you possibly have studied and read about in Sunday school and confirmation, and especially the books of 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles. Where is Canaan? Well, Canaan is the name given to the land that is between the Mediterranean Sea and the Euphrates River and the Arabian Desert to the east. Today it includes the countries of Israel, of course, and Palestine, or Gaza. It's in two parts now, and Jordan, and Syria, and Libya, and parts the west corner of Saudi Arabia. It's a land that is very divided. There are a lot of hills and valleys there, and sources of water. And the last ice age ended, the Upper Dryas, it's called, about 12,000 years ago. Since that time, there's been climate change, and this area is drying out. So therefore, water and moisture is very important for the people, and it's a matter very often of life or death to get the source of water. Remember today's readings of Scripture. They talked to us about Joel, and Joel was thankful to God for the water sources and for the crops that came with it. So the Canaanites are obviously the people who lived in this land of Canaan, and they include a number of people that you possibly read about in school or in church or in your own reading, and they include these people: the Phoenicians, the Ugarites, the Jebusites around Jerusalem, the Edomites, the Ammonites, the Midianites, and others. In fact, there were so many small little cities in Canaan. Almost every valley had its own little city and its king and its own people with their identity. It's not like Egypt with one great big empire stretching, from one end of the country to another under one rule. It's all fragmented. As we read in the Bible, for example, talks about Joshua conquering these places. Even when Joshua was leading the Israelites, it talked about 139 cities that he conquered, but there were many, many more. So the question here is a big challenge. And that is, what do you consider to be your most precious possession? What would you consider giving up? For many of us, our most precious possession is our children. Most of us would say we love our children profoundly and that we would never give them up, no matter how much fame, power, and wealth we may give in return. You would possibly be shocked, maybe you've read about it already, to learn that the religion of the Canaanites Well, yes, their striking central portion of their beliefs is the sacrifice of their children to one of their gods. We know this god, he's called Baal, and we remember the contest with his priests and the priest Elijah representing the Israelites. All right, what would you be surprised to know? Of course, we read it in the Bible that the people and their religion were neighbors to the ancient Israelites. And rather than the indigenous people, that is the Canaanites, being converted to God's ways, the opposite, it seems, from what history tells us. The Bible sort of mentions that, but archaeology is confirming it, that it's the other way, that the Israelites were very, very attractive to worship this bloodthirsty God and follow his ways. So how did this strong influence come about? I think it came about because of the proximity of the land. They were in the same area, and they were speaking approximately the same language. Anthropologists, linguists say that the language in this area was called West Semitic. And it's also very important in terms of our civilization, because this language, from this language we get our modern alphabet. This is the cradle of our English alphabet and all the European alphabets. This area developed agriculture at a very early date. The first recorded city in history that we know of was founded in this area. That city is Jericho, which was founded about 10,000 years ago. We know the history of Jericho is recorded in the Bible. We know about Joshua and Jericho. Maybe you would be surprised if I told you this, that archaeologists say that when Joshua came to Jericho, there wasn't anyone living there. So who to believe? I'm just the messenger to tell you what the situation is. So there's a lot of, even today, there is a lot of contest going on between historians, archaeologists, theologians, and biblical scholars about what happened in this land and the conflict between them. So we can regard the Israelites as strangers in a strange land, and they were worshiping Yahweh instead of Baal, and they were not participating in Baal worship and the local ceremonies. So there's this situation, and the dates are uncertain. Generally, we associate David and Solomon with the 10th century BC. But if the dating is off by a slight amount using carbon-14 or potassium argon dating, then we switch from what is considered to be the time of Solomon and David to the time of Ahab and Jezebel. So there's a debate going on, even at the moment, very contested between academics whether there was ever a David and a Solomon, or whether the great things, the great places like Megiddo and others were actually built by Ahab. So don't lose faith, however. You can see I'm under some pressure, but anyway, God will help me to see the right things. And many times what seems to be contrary just works out and deepens our understanding. So our story will take place after David and Solomon. And that takes place in the 9th century. The Israelites have settled in Canaan. And there is a big conflict brewing, because in that century, the house of Jeroboam, as remember in the scriptures, after Solomon died, Jeroboam led the 10 tribes of the north, and they formed the kingdom of Israel. This house continued for maybe 2 generations, and then it was overthrown by a guy called Omri. And then his son was Ahab, the very famous Ahab in the Bible. And he married the daughter of the king of Sidon, it says some places. But what was happening at that time was that Phoenicia, which was the Canaanite people, they were forming their own country. And Sidon was part of it. It went in and with Tyre, which was their major city. So Tyre, Sidon, Biblios, and other places, they're at this time forming the Phoenician people, the kingdom of Phoenicia. The king of Phoenicia marries his daughter to Ahab. His daughter's name is Jezebel. You possibly heard of that. And she saw an opportunity to spread the worship of Baal to the kingdom of Israel. So what she did was she went after some of the precepts that were very important to the Israelites. And that's told in the story of the vineyard. And she believed in the rule of the absolute power of the kings of the lands. She persuaded Ahab also to build a major temple to Baal in the capital, Samaria. And she also obtained support from Ahab for a numerous priesthood. Also, we read that she managed to marry her daughter, Athaliah, to the king of Judah. So things went her way for a while. However, as stated before, we see that God raised up Elijah to upset her plans. In a showdown, the priests of Baal were defeated. Jezebel swore vengeance, and Elijah fled into the wilderness. Then there was the restoration under Jehu. After Ahab died, the situation was gradually restored and the power of Baal as a religion curtailed. So this is possibly contrary to what most of us believe, because we believe that Ahab was a very bad king and he didn't have much power. But in terms of academics, Ahab was a great king Ahab led the armies. He led a coalition of Canaanite peoples against the Assyrians, and he stopped their encroachment. They wanted to move and take over all the lands up to the Mediterranean Sea. In battle, he defeated them. Of course, this is mentioned somewhat in the Bible because Ahab was killed in this battle, and after he died, then Jehu, who was from Judah, was able to take over and purify the nation. But the point I'm trying to make is that there was a serious attempt to change Israel from worship of Yahweh to the worship of Baal. And it's I didn't realize until I did this study how close it really came to tipping the balance so that Israel became a Baal worshiping place. So what is so exciting for people that they would need to worship Baal? Well, I think the thing is that these people, they're in their valleys and they are dependent upon water supplies. Baal is the god of thunder and storms. They feel that if they give their all, don't hold back anything to Baal, he will bless them with storms, and with the water they will have abundant grain. So the thinking is, or those people who support Baal, is that we sacrifice our children now, but in the future we'll have more children and we'll have a better life. And it was because we made this sacrifice. Now, remember that in this area, they've been sacrificing their children for some time. And we remember the story of Abraham and Isaac. Isaac almost sacrificed his son. I'm sorry, I'm getting so wound up and confused. My apologies. Yes. So this was very difficult decision for Abraham. If we were placed in that situation, it wouldn't take us 2 seconds to decide not to sacrifice our children. But for them, with climate change, the drying up of their waters, hunger, and so forth, and all the other people around them doing the same, it was enormous pressure. So you can see it doesn't really give the sense just reading the Bible, for example, the pressure on Abraham in the midst of the Canaanites to sacrifice Isaac. One of the works that you might read if you're interested in is called Fear and Trembling by the Danish theologian and philosopher Søren Kierkegaard, who basically says you have to be in this situation and understand it, not just to say, oh, the situation is obvious, there isn't any other side, let's move on, what's the point? But actually it was a tremendous, heart-wrenching experience for them. Fortunately, they made the right choice in the long run. But I think it's evident even from reading scriptures that Isaac was traumatized for the rest of his life. And who wouldn't be? If I had been Isaac, would I like to go through life thinking my father almost killed me? Does he really love me, or so on? Of course, we are talking in hindsight, so we can understand things and possibly don't have enough appreciation of what it was like. So let's take a look at the world of the Canaanites. First of all, the bull. They often presented Baal as a bull. And this is not just an ordinary bull. Those of you who are study farming or engaged in farming, you know that for a long time, they only died out in the early 1700s, that the cattle that our ancestors looked after used to be enormous compared to today's. Today's cattle are basically runts, the domesticated cattle compared to the old ones. They used to have, the old ones, it's a prehistoric, now considered prehistoric because there aren't any left. They were called aurochs, and they were basically twice as big in terms of length and possibly 4 times in terms of mass. They were enormous beasts and very powerful. And when they rammed into something, it was with tremendous force and it made a lot of noise. And that's why they presented Baal as a bull. And other people presented him that way too. Not Baal, but their gods. For example, in Egypt, they had the bull of Apis. And remember that Aaron, he constructed the golden calf. Well, that's sort of like, they think that he was sort of mocking at the same time as doing the people's will. He was showing them wasn't the big bull they were getting, but just a little calf. But the thing that I want to emphasize is that the people were very attracted to worshiping bulls because of their power. So in this land, the people set up temples to their gods. And in these temples, there were statues of the gods, and there were feasts going on during the year. And they would have processions as part of their religion, parading around statues of the gods and stones that they had, large stones that they had set up in honor of the gods. And these would often be smeared with blood and oil. So the kings of all these little kings, they were not only the king in the secular sense, but they are also the high priest of their local city or village. So you possibly heard of priest kings. So actually these were priest kings, and they would offer sacrifices of animals to the gods. And they believed that God spoke to the priests and to the kings through dreams and other things, such as birth abnormalities, the appearance of the liver, and astrology. The purpose of the kings, so they say, was to enforce the will of the gods. The Canaanites also had shrines as well as temples. They had shrines within their own homes. And it mentions in the Bible that they also worshiped in high places. Those were open areas up in the mountains, usually on a plateau, like a tarn, I think it's described in geography, a place sort of level where the water comes down and cools and then it goes again. And there they would set up these pillars or trees. Sometimes they were poles of trees, other times they planted them. The people were in the Canaanite religion. People were supposed to be obedient. You were not supposed to question the king. But what did they believe in the afterlife? They believed basically that the afterlife, you were a shadow. It was very grim for you. It wasn't a place of blessing, but it was a place of shadow compared to life at the present time. They also didn't believe in any creator God. They just believed that the world had existed for a long time and that the gods had always been. One of the big myths they have was of Baal and Ammon. Baal and Ammon were sister and brother gods. They were children of El. I think you've heard Pastor Marla speak about El. He was supposed to be the high god in the Canaanite religion. So he had Baal and Mot and Ammon. And Baal and Mot fought. Baal was the god of thunder and storms, and Mot was the god of death. And Mot was usually beating Baal. But then he called upon his sister, Annette, to help him. And then Annette, punched out Mot. She was victorious. She was a good sister, although this is all, mythology. And then she took Mot's body and shredded it all up and made it into food for the people. So, yes, it's a very interesting. They believe that happened every year, that Baal and Mot and Annette would fight with each other, and the end result would be that Baal would bring the storms and that Annette would prevail over death or Mot, and out of Mot's body would come the crops that would sustain them in life. They were also very concerned about pollution. They believed that the body, basically what comes out of the body or is on the body will defile you, and you will have to be separated from the rest of the community. And some of those things that would defile you would be blood, skin diseases, menses, semen, bones, tombs, excrement, pus, idols, and consulting demons. So how could you become clean? You needed to have a thorough washing. Water was regarded as the best. Also, you could go to a priest and he could bless you and cleanse you. As I mentioned, the Israelites were living among the Canaanites, and what the interesting thing is that they incorporated a lot of Canaanite beliefs and ideas. For example, just those things I mentioned, the idea of defilement and its atonement, that seems to be carried over to some extent into the Israelite religion. Now, we look at architecture. Did you know, I was surprised, that King Solomon's temple incorporates Canaanite architectural perspectives. And this shouldn't be a surprise to me or to you, because who did King Solomon get to build his temple? Well, he got Hiram, king of Tyre, to do it, and he gave them the cedars of Lebanon and the large blocks of stone in which to construct it. And he also, there was another Hiram, he was also the architect of King Solomon's temple. And it was done in the style of the temples of the area. One was the plan, the idea that you would have one hall leading to another hall with a gateway and a colonnaded entrance. That's all very familiar. And also that you would have cherubims, and that there would be places for washing. Then you often had a large bowl in which people could cleanse themselves, or the priests clean them. They really worshipped stones that fell from heaven, especially meteors, because they felt that they had come from the divine. They believed in a 7-year cycle. The number 7 was very important to them. It was also important to the Israelites. Mount Hermon, which was also considered Mount El, was also a sacred place. So what are some of the Canaanite cities? Well, you possibly heard of some of them. Ugarit, Ebla, Hazor, etc. But at this time, there's another important point too in terms of the Canaanites and what they believed. And that is that they believed that bodies and contact with bodies created defilement. They did not allow bodies to be disposed of within the city limits. So cemeteries all had to be outside, and they believed that bodies had to be buried, not as elaborately as the Egyptians, but much more elaborately than the Persians. So there possibly are a lot of questions that are on your mind about the Canaanites, and I'd be pleased to answer your questions if I can. If I can't, I will use it as an opportunity to learn. And I thank you very much for your attention. We will have our next presentation in 3 weeks' time, I believe. And there we're going to learn about a religion that's still with us, even though people don't believe it. They think it's expired a long time ago. I don't know if you can guess which one it is, but anyway, a lot of people worship with it every day. So thank you for your attention, and I am sorry if I confused you or anything, but I will try to make things more straightforward. Yes?
Stephen, don't keep us guessing. What is the religion in 3 weeks?
You really want to know now?
Yes.
We do.
Yeah.
All right, it's the Babylonians. And what they have that people consult, many people, hundreds of millions of people still, is their daily horoscope. So, but that all comes, as we'll see, from the Babylonians, because they were expert astronomers, and they wrote basically the books that are still consulted by astrologers today. They believed that the movements of the stars were depicting for them the movements of the gods.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Stephen.
You're welcome. Oh, you're very welcome.
Have you been to Israel?
Pardon?
Have you been to Israel?
No, I haven't.
To the western waiting wall. Before you go, you have to wash.
Yes.
So how washing is so important, just like the energy. So these things that is coming along.
Yes. Well, yes, you can drill down. It's very fascinating. And it's not all pure, like we're the good guys and the bad guys. Yeah. Both sides exchange views with each other.
Yeah, I was also thinking of Abraham and Isaac. So it was actually God telling him that, or other deities telling to sacrifice? The Bible says God.
Yes. But the realization, that's what Abraham said. But the difficulty is, we can accept what they say that God told them what to do, but is it really true? There is there an independent truth seeker or circle of people?
The other one, they sacrificed their kids, and that was it. He brought.
What God? Yes.
And then there was a ram instead.
Right. Well, you can interpret it many ways.
Many ways, yes.
The way that it's interpreted in the Bible is that God wanted to test Abraham to see if he was devoted to him as he said he was. So God was going on to sacrifice. Have to sacrifice.
That's why you can
doubt there.
Yeah.
Well, have a good day, you guys.
Yeah.
Have a good week. Some more there?
I just gotta put away the microphone, I guess I gotta use the notebook to shut this guy off.
No. The tablet's still downstairs.
Is it? Oh.
Busy. managing.
Yeah.
That's great.
All wrapped up. Right, wrapped up.
That's good. Did I tell you about the crowd here last night?
No.
You couldn't have got another car parked on the parking lot if you hadn't tried. They were double parked all the way, you know.
That was for there was a memorial or something here.
For what that one of the people. Yeah, I know they have their 40-day, you know, or whatever else
Yeah.
day, but it was just, if anyone needed to get out, they were just completely out of luck. I just thought, oh, I wonder how many were down there because, what's her name? Lina has been asking us for, how many people can we have downstairs?
I see.
Well, Marlis and I had years ago figured out you can put 8 to 10 people, depending on the size, in each pew upstairs. Well, you shouldn't have more people downstairs than you can have in the main floor. And
I guess not, although
it's,
like, do we actually have a capacity?
apparently we used to, according to the
fire?
fire department.
Yeah.
And but she said, well, where does it say it in the insurance? I don't know. Or you can, you know,
Our insurance doesn't cover that.
doesn't cover it. Well, it would, you know, because
No.
it's liability issues if that many